Today, we have an exciting guest on, Chad Carden. He's the founder of the Carden Group, a company focusing on improving organizations by enhancing people. Now, his professional journey began when he was just 14 years old, and he was actually mentored by Zig Ziglar himself. So, over the years, he's worked with various organizations, both public and private, learning from different entrepreneurs, as well as working with some huge enterprises such as AT&T, JP Morgan, Bank of America, etc. Now, in this episode, we're going to dive into a variety of different topics, such as all the lessons he's learned from people like Zig Ziglar and other mentors in his life. We're going to dive into how do you create change in huge organizations? What's the formula for that? We're going to go into lessons that he's had himself, the future of the industries, including, AI and changes people need to understand, and a whole variety of different things. This was a very exciting and fun episode to record, and I hope you find a lot of golden nuggets within this because I definitely came away with a lot of additional knowledge. So on that note, I hope you enjoy this episode of Visionary Voices. Please rate it wherever you're watching this or listening to it, and also share because that's really going to help the show grow. So I hope you enjoy this episode of Visionary Voices. So Chad, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Visionary Voices. Can you give us a top level view of what it is that you do right now and your journey so far?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. So I am in what I call the people space, right? We've started a company that over 2.5 decades that really believe that organizations improve when people improve. And people improve when leaders improve. And so we focus on how do we make sure we're maximizing the potential and the untapped potential of people inside of organizations to ultimately drive results through authentic and sincere ways of development, through authentic and sincere ways to drive higher levels of engagement, higher levels of fulfillment in what people do. And really, ultimately, it's about how do we help organizations help their people create what we call opportunity mindset, not obligation mindset. So opportunity says I get to, obligation says I have to. Now, I'm not Cloud9, Disney World, the world's perfect, but how do we sincerely and authentically drive more of that opportunity mindset? And we do that a lot through retention efforts. We did a lot through leadership development, through executive development, strategic planning, board development, a lot of areas we get into, but that's the space that we're in right now. And I'm having a blast doing it.
Amazing. I love the mission there, and I love the things that you guys are working with companies on. Can you tell me the journey on actually getting into the business and what made you
Yeah,
get into the world of business and do it yourself and get into the world of
yeah, it's a great question. So when I was 14 years old, and I was blessed at 14 years old to really have a path. I know a lot of people are still trying to figure it out, but I was 14 years old. I was watching my dad in Chicago share the stage with a guy by the name of Zig Ziglar. It was at the Rosemont Horizon, now called the Donald Lee Stevenson Center, right by the airport, right by O'Hare. And I had a chance to go backstage and I had a chance to meet Zig. And I said, Dad, this is what I want to do with my life. I didn't know anything about it, but I watched Zig come in, get on stage, wow an audience, leave stage, exit stage left, go wherever he went. And I was like, this is what I want to do. He said, you're 14 years old. Why don't you think about it for a little bit and come back and talk to me? So I thought about it. And I said, Dad, this is what I want to do with my life. My dad was in that space, kind of in that business, consulting and advising. And so I had a chance to be mentored under Zig and my dad from like 14 to 20 years old, where we just kind of immersed in me understanding the people dynamics. And I really learned lessons back then that I didn't realize I was learning that I'm still using today, which is, listen, I'm not always the smartest guy in the room. There's people that are way more intelligent than I am. But if I can interact authentically with people, it opens up a lot of doors. Right. And so and it's not about manipulation. It's not about, but how can I find ways to work with people that is sincere, that creates those win-win situations? And that was one of the biggest lessons that I learned. So then at 20 years old, I could bore you for hours on the details, but since 20 years old, my dad actually got out of the business he was in. And they kind of both coached me to go to work for a company called Dale Carnegie Training. And I had read How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's one of the first books my dad had me read. And so I went to work for Dale Carnegie, and I wanted to be a franchise owner. They're called sponsors in that world. And so I really worked hard. I worked under a guy by the name of Mark Norman, who still to this day is my mentor, Daryl Perkins, who's still a mentor of mine, Bob Pank, rest his soul, he's gone. And I really wanted to go down the Carnegie path. And so I did that for about 5 years. And I was just getting ready to go into my sponsorship kind of the avenue to really open up my own franchise. And there were about 12 sponsors that were getting out of the business. Carnegie's still a great platform today, but companies at that time were wanting more customized stuff. So I had an opportunity. Again, I had an opportunity at 14 when I met Zig. I had an opportunity at 25 to really ride the coattails of 12 sponsors in the Carnegie world who some of them had more experience than I had age, right, than I was uh, on earth, to really work under them and really define how we help organizations set themselves up for success with some of the things I talked about a little earlier. And so I'm 48 years old now. So I had a chance to hang my own shingle at 25 and work with them for about 5, 6, 7 years, and then really have a really strong foundation where not that I didn't need them anymore, but we really, we kind of went our separate ways, all went down different paths. We still connect today, but everybody's kind of doing their own thing, staying in their own lane. So that's how the whole thing started.
That's such an interesting journey because those people that you mentioned for a lot of people have been such big inspirations, and we've always heard their work and everything, but you've been mentored by them, right? You've had these
Yeah.
conversations with them. So, I mean, with Zig, I mean, what type of lessons did you learn from him when you're under that mentorship? Because again, he's been such an inspiration for so many of us. I'd love to learn some of the things that
Yeah.
you've learned from him.
Well, he had down in Texas, he had what he called Born to Win workshops. He had these workshops that I was able to get privy to and see the insights. And of course, he was at one time he was like the number one sales guru out there, right? Wrote a lot of books, right? Over the top, see at the top, these types of things. But a few things that continue to stick out to me today is he always said, if again, I'm talking about like authentic and sincere. A lot of people think that the things that I do are BS, right? Like this is all BS. It's all fluff. It's not real world. So I try to just remove that equation. But he always said, if you can help enough people get what they want, you're going to get what you want, which is ultimately kind of a servant mentality, right? It's like in our organization right now, I want to create what I call a win-win-win. A win for our clients and the people that we serve. That's number one focus of us. How do we provide value and we're an asset to them, not a liability, right? Because if we do that, our brand increases and enhances. The second thing I want to do is create a win. So the second win is for the team, right? The people working on those projects, the people working in the office, the people working, project managers, project leads, our advisors, our partners that do work with us on those projects. If I can create a win for them, I win. Right, like, so that is one of the main anchor points that I learned working through Zig, was that it's that if you help enough other people, ultimately there's that law of reciprocity and it will come back to you. So that really still is true today. And that's what I mean. Like, if I always tell the team, if it's not energy for you, like if you don't enjoy doing this anymore, just raise your hand. Like, raise your hand at any time. Just tell me. There's other avenues, there's other opportunities. I don't want anybody have an obligation mindset in our organization, because it doesn't serve us, it doesn't serve anybody, and it doesn't set us up for the highest probability of success.
I love that win-win-win principle. I think it's so simple, but it's so true. And because you're optimizing for that, right? At the end of the day, everyone is going to win. And as you said, when you put value out into the world, that is going to come back in one way, shape, or form. Because I feel like a lot of businesses, well, especially younger entrepreneurs right now, right? We're seeing a lifestyle of X, Y, Z, and a lot of the methods that are taught, and it's something when I got into business, this is what I was taught at the same time, was to be very transactional in the way we were dealing with clients or getting new clients or hiring, firing team members, whatever that looked like, just very transactional and not relationship focused and focusing on that win-win-win principle. And I feel like something that's going to really have to shift over the next few years is getting back to that authenticity, that relationship focus, that win-win-win principle. Because I think some businesses and some business owners have started to lose that a little bit when it's become easy to be transactional with, let's say, marketing, for example, doing cold outbound. You're just blasting out 10,000 emails a week. Very transactional the way you're approaching that relationship, but bringing it back to just having these authentic conversations. And so, I mean, on your side, when it comes down to authenticity, what's your definition of authenticity?
Yeah. It's an interesting avenue to explore, because I'm with you. I mean, I believe that a relationship driven avenue gets you so much further than transactional. I think transactional can win in certain situations. I also think it's very short-sighted. I think it's very, and I always say that, short-term shortcuts create long-term headaches, right? Short-term investments create long-term dividends, and I'm talking about the relationships that we're building. So I could be short-sighted, and I can do those types of things, but authenticity, what that means, back to your question, is how do we truly create a relationship where we're working together to drive the results that ultimately, again, those wins are going to come out, right? And when I talk about authenticity too, I always talk about, and this was something that I got from Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach. He said, every role, responsibility, whatever somebody does, their career, their job function, of all the activities that they have to do, there are things that are energy for them. Okay. So energy means three things. One, they're good at it, they enjoy doing it, and it moves the business forward. So it drives results. Okay. And then there's stuff, or go back to that obligation mindset, right? And stuff is defined as anything that drains energy, somebody else could be or should be doing it, and negative relationships that are going nowhere. So that's the stuff. So when I'm talking to people about creating something that's an authentic relationship, I really want to know within the work that they do, what's energy? What drives them? What do they see every single day where they get to do these things? And then what's stuff? What are things that they more are obligation, or they have to do these things? And then I want to do everything I can to reallocate their time to focus on energy driven activities or opportunity mindset activities and eliminate the stuff. Now, again, we're not going to eliminate all the stuff. Adam Carroll, a good friend of mine in this business, he always says there's a 20% suck factor in anything that we do, right? Anything that we do, there's always going to be a suck factor to it. So we look at the 4 Ds when it comes to the authenticity, right? So if people have stuff, are there things that we can delegate? Right? Are there things that somebody else should be or could be doing? I get blasted for this on social media all the time when I say, as a leader, you should only do the things that you can do. You should never do the things that somebody else could be or should be doing. People always say that that's a cop out, and you want to be in the trenches with your people and you want to do those things. I don't disagree with all that. However, if you want to leverage your time and leverage your resources and leverage your people, get them doing the things that they should be doing, and you focus on the things that you should be doing. So that's one. The other one is, are there things that we need to defer? Which means it's kind of like these to-do lists. I'm just as guilty as anybody. You have these to-do lists, and every time you clean them up, there's items that stay on those damn to-do lists over and over and over and over, right? Just defer them. Like maybe they're not relevant this week, this quarter, this month, this year, whatever the situation is, but just defer them and buy back more mental space for energy-driven activities. The next D is delete. Are there things that just don't make sense? There's so much noise in business today. There's so much, as an entrepreneur, there's so much noise as an entrepreneur. What truly makes sense? There's a difference between being busy and being productive, right? We could be busy 24/7 as entrepreneurs. The question is, are we being productive? Are we moving forward? So what are those things that we need to delete? And then the last one is do. What are those things that you can't defer, you can't delegate, you can't delete, but you just have to change your mindset to them? Right? Because they're just part of what you signed up for. There are things that I don't like to do as an entrepreneur, but nobody else can do them. I have to do them. So how do I change my mindset? That's what I mean by authenticity. When we can get people in those roles and working in that fashion, that's when the highest productivity, the highest efficiencies, the highest effectiveness, and the greatest results shine.
I love that. I think whilst you were saying that, I was doing a quick audit of some of the tasks and everything that I'm doing. Is this bringing me energy, as you said, or creating energy within me? What things are sucking energy away from me as well? And I think that's an audit that every so often as a business owner, because again, it's so easy. You go through, a busy period, and then, as you said, your to-do list is full up of certain things. You've introduced a bunch of new activities and everything, but you just have to stop and take audit of all these tasks and things that you're doing when you're speaking to your team. What tasks are they doing, and having this open conversation with them, right? Is this creating energy for you? Is this taking
Right.
energy away from you? And then from there, you can make the changes needed. So, as you said, the win-win-win. Everyone wins at the end of it. But you have to go through that audit process, because in my experiences, kind of went through a couple years of just stacking up. Oh, I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to do this. And then it wasn't until about 6 to 8 months ago, I was like, actually, do I need to be doing these things? Right.
Right.
Start deleting some of these things out, starting to delegate, hiring up to delegate some things out. And that will happen because, stopped and just audited what it is that I'm doing. And I feel like that's a routine exercise that everyone should get into the habit of just doing, because as you said, when you just clear all that stuff out, you can then be authentic in the way you're moving with your work and your relationships and everything in that realm as well. So I think that's such an important lesson for sure.
100%. And then the other thing that you mentioned is like, so there's two types of, there's our clients, then there's our team. With our team too, we also like to play the long game. And there's again, I met this guy through one of my best friends, Adam Carroll's named Shane Mack. This guy's doing amazing things in the world of entrepreneurial space and technology. I met him probably about 15 years ago now. It's been a while. But he started several companies, sold several companies, been very successful in the space that he's in. But he has an onboarding policy that from day one, he teaches people how to quit. Okay. So a lot of times, if you think about it, and it was a fascinating idea for me, because a lot of times, if somebody's not happy in an organization, sometimes it's hard to quit, right? You don't know how to do it. You don't know what to do. Is there another job out there? Whatever it is it might be. So he just makes it real easy to quit if you don't want to be there anymore. And he has 4 criteria. He said, number one, do it in person. Number one, do it in person. Just be upfront and honest and know that we're just going to absorb it. Just be big enough to do it in person. Number 2, help finish the things that you started. So if you're in the middle of a project, and I'm not saying you have to stop it or you have to complete it, but how do you transition in a way that sets up the next person for success? Number 3, realize that if we feel we want to keep you, he reserved the right to just have those conversations, right? And he put that up front. Like, if I think it's something that we might be able to fix, I reserve the right to at least open up those conversations. And number 4, realize that life's too short. I will support and help you any way that you can as you move along your journey in your career or this space or whatever it is it might be, as long as it's not detrimental to the organization. So that's something that I've also implemented with the team. Like, just if it's not for you, let's figure out a way what the best path is, and know life's too short to hold animosity. I certainly don't need it. I'll support whatever it is you do. I just want to make sure you're doing things that set you up for success, especially when you're working underneath the Carden Group.
I think that's such a clever way to approach that, right? Is saying it up front. And the biggest message I'm getting from all these different bits of conversation we're having is that authenticity, right? Is you're just being upfront about, like, look, this is what it is. If you want to go a different direction, just follow these
Right.
steps, right? Let's have these conversations, and you're just being upfront and honest about it. Because you're right, when someone is unhappy in the workplace, they start stressing out about it. They'll ruminate on it a little bit more. They might leave in a way which is very negative for the business and makes the business struggle a little bit more. So you've negated all those things by just being upfront and honest at the very start. So it's a very clever way of building up the team.
Here's what's funny. For 15 years ago, 12 years ago, whenever I met Shane and he introduced this to me, here's the funny thing. I've tried to introduce that to every one of my clients, every HR I've ever worked with. And we work some large organizations across the globe. Not one of them has implemented it. You know what I mean? And that's a telltale sign. Like, there's some sort of fear factor or some sort of like, well, if I do that, it's going to open up. I believe that, again, there's people that just have a real hard time grasping that concept because they feel like it's going to have the impact that, to me, is it's not going to have. It's going to have the impact, like you said. Like, I think people are going to be more engaged and more fulfilled with what they do because they know that there's that support there and there's that realness or that authenticity.